So the Dallas Cowboys have a win total here at 10.5, NFC East plus 130. They are 850 to win the conference, and they're 18-1 to win the Super Bowl. And they had that 12-5 record, as I mentioned, to win the division last year. So I'm just going to run through some of their statistics from last season, talk about some players who left, some new faces in town, and just get into some of their fantasy, assets. So this is America's team. Why not start with them, right? According to Football Outsiders, 6th in total DVOA, 6th in pass DVOA, 13th in rush DVOA, 407 yards per game. That was number 1 in the NFL. 282 passing yards per game, number 2, just behind the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They were 9th in rushing yards per game, 124. They scored the most points per game in the NFL, 31 points per game, and 112 rushing yards per game. Actually, the 16th fewest, which is a little surprising considering the 1-2 punch they had and the offensive line. There are some key guys that are missing here offensively, but let's first run through the defense. So we talked about the offense, pretty strong. The defense actually pretty good as well. And Dan Quinn, the first year as defensive coordinator in Dallas, came over from Atlanta, the head coach, and he turned this defense around pretty easily, actually. Like it was night and day from 2 years ago to last year. 2nd in total DVOA defense, according to Football Outsiders again. 2nd against the pass, 16th against the run, 351 yards allowed per game, 14th, just kind of in the middle of the pack. 238 passing yards allowed per game, 13th most. 21 points allowed per game, the 7th fewest. So let's just kind of start with some of the changes from the squad. And the biggest one, of course, is Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper was traded to the Cleveland Browns. Cedric Wilson was let go, and now he's a member of the Miami Dolphins. They lost some pieces on the offensive line, Collins and Connor Williams, and then Randy Gregory as well. Pieces that are in, Dante Fowler, defensive end, and James Washington. So the biggest offensive impact, of course, is here with Amari Cooper. And there's no question that Dak Prescott's stock is taking a little bit of a hit here without Amari Cooper. Cooper, 1,000-yard season, 3 of them with the Dallas Cowboys in his 4 years. And he racked up 26 touchdowns in 47 games. He was clearly Dak's number 1 guy over the past couple seasons. He was a beast inside the NFC East. He always torched the Philadelphia Eagles. He had massive games against the Giants and Washington as well. His fantasy finishes over the past couple seasons with Dallas: wide receiver 18, wide receiver 9, wide receiver 16, and then this past year, wide receiver 27, which was his first in Dallas without 1,000 yards. He had 865. So what does that mean? Stock down a little bit for Dak Prescott. Let's be fair. Let's be honest. He is missing an alpha, but a stock up here for CeeDee Lamb. And CeeDee Lamb, I think a lot of people were expecting, a big campaign from him last year, drafting him borderline as a low-end wide receiver 1, upside to be a wide receiver 1, and he really just didn't return value. But certainly going to benefit this year with no Amari Cooper. Michael Gallup did re-sign with the Dallas Cowboys, but all signs point to him potentially starting the season on the PUP list, so we could miss a little bit of time. So wheels up for CeeDee Lamb, wheels up for Dalton Schultz, who had a fantastic finish last year. One of the best waiver wire pickups last year at the tight end position. He was phenomenal, and I expect him to be really good this year as well. I have him roughly ranked around tight end 6, tight end 7. I think he could be a top 10 tight end. Thank you, Tyler, for switching over to this. Just a little bit of a feel of where these guys are going. Dak Prescott as quarterback 7, ADP 68. This is NFFC leagues, high-stakes leagues, drafts happening over the past 6 weeks or so. Give you a little bit of feel as drafts really start to ramp up here into July. I'm not going to have any shares of Dak Prescott. I think he's fine as a quarterback. I don't see the top 5 upside. Like I said, I think, stock down overall from the offensive side of things, and also the offensive line. I don't think they really did anything to, replace the pieces that they missed on the offensive line or Amari Cooper. I know they drafted Jalen Tolbert, wide receiver out of South Alabama, but let's be honest, he's no Amari Cooper. Zeke and Pollard, we'll get into them in a little bit. Zeke is really falling down draft boards, RB20, ADP 42. This time last year, he was going as a top 5 pick. Tony Pollard, everybody's favorite running back. Everybody says it, right? Pollard over Zeke. I mean, we'll get into some of the numbers. He was certainly more efficient, and he looked a lot better than Zeke last year. CeeDee Lamb, as I mentioned, wide receiver 6, ADP 10. It's rich. It's fair, though. I think he's going to get well over 100 targets. Disappointing last year, 70-some-odd catches. I think he could flirt with, 90, 95, maybe even get to 100 this year in this offense as the go-to guy, especially if Michael Gallup there misses some time as wide receiver 53. I really like Gallup, actually. I don't mind taking shots on him. Maybe it's more of a best ball play if you want to stack up on Dallas. You can certainly do that if you get Lamb in the first round. You can get Dak a little bit later on, and then go with Gallup and Schultz in there to have yourself a really strong Cowboy stack. There's still going to be a top 10 offense, maybe top 5, but not number 1. I don't expect them to be the best offense in football this year. Jalen Tolbert, as I mentioned, wide receiver 76 there, and James Washington as a guy that they acquired from Pittsburgh who could have a role to start the season. There could be, a scenario where we're talking about James Washington in deep leagues as like a flex play, but you shouldn't be in that kind of situation from week 1. Like, you shouldn't be hurting where you're rolling out James Washington. Maybe we're talking about him from a DFS standpoint. I believe they start the season week 1 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Actually, I'll save kind of the win total and round out, maybe roll through their schedule and give some wins. I want to continue here with some of the offensive pieces. So Blake Jarwin not expected to be back either. So, Wilson gone and Cooper gone, and James Washington really probably not going to be a factor, and Tolbert being a rookie and, learning the playbook and, how large is his role going to be off the hop. I think it's going to be a whole lot of both Pollard and Zeke. Dak, of course, probably running around a little bit more as, he had multiple injuries last year. Remember Hard Knocks? And, if you watch Hard Knocks, he really didn't get a lot of reps, and, the ankle looked good. He looked like he was fine. I mean, he talked about how he was fine, but I'm sure there was, some hesitancy for him to run the rock. We might see that a little bit more. I think he's still a low-end quarterback 1. Like I said, I just don't want to spend that price for him as quarterback 7. But I think with Cooper gone, CeeDee Lamb is good to go. Schultz is good to go. And then I'm kind of out on Zeke. I really am. So let's just roll through Zeke and Pollard here a little bit. So I mentioned he was a top 5 pick. I looked back and just took a peek, and I was pretty sure of it, but he went as high as number 2 overall in NFFC drafts last year. But you see the ADP, a huge difference here from this time last year. And again, in May, I saw he was taken on average, again, number 2 overall. So he still managed to score 10 rushing touchdowns and finished with 1,000 yards. Like, at the same time, like, what are we complaining about here with Zeke? 10 scores and 1,000 yards. 1,000 yards for the 3rd time in his last 4 years. He finishes RB6, but he finishes RB15 in points per game. That's a half-point setting. So all of that is like, okay, right? I mean, he still kind of returned value, like not from a point per game standpoint, but finishing as an RB1 and having 1,000 yards and having double-digit touchdowns. And part of the season, I guess, that he had was a little bit touchdown dependent, but there are some negatives here. A career low 237 rushing attempts, and he had an extra game. He only had 3 games with 18-plus carries after hitting that mark 8 times in 2020. His 65 targets and 47 grabs were the fewest he's had since 2017. Tony Pollard had 107 fewer carries, but he had a 5.5 yard per carry mark compared to Zeke's 4.2. He also had more receiving yards on fewer targets and fewer catches. I believe the RB20 value there, I believe the RB20 price tag, I think it's kind of valuable. I think if you start your drafts with wide receiver, I think it's okay, to have Zeke, but I just don't view him as an RB1 anymore. And that's the thing. Like, I'm probably just going to pass, right? I want to be out before it really starts to go downhill. And I do believe Tony Pollard is a really good running back. It's a strong 1-2 punch. You see 1-2 punches across the league. And I don't think that's going to change here with Dallas. I think maybe it's a 60-40 split, maybe 60-40 in favor of Zeke, and Pollard is sprinkled in a little bit more. I do believe Zeke is going to remain the goal line back. I think he's still going to rack up 7 to 10 rushing touchdowns. You're going to have big Zeke games. You're going to have games where he looks really sluggish. He's not running between the tackles. And you're going to have games where Tony Pollard just looks better, right? That was the case last year. He looks better. He looks like he's got a little bit more of a giddy up in his step. And he's probably going to get a lot of the 3rd down reps, maybe 2-minute drill stuff. It's not like Zeke can't catch. We just gave you some of the numbers, 47 grabs, 65 targets. He can catch, but just compared to years in the past, we're starting to see a little bit of a decline. So that's all I really have from them offensively. The outlook for me, I got written down here. Like I said, I think they created a little bit of a hole when they let Williams and Collins walk. And Amari Cooper off the books. I don't think that they really did a whole lot to, cover up those holes. I really do like CeeDee Lamb as a wide receiver. He was my favorite wide receiver from that draft class. I'm a huge fan of his. I think he reminds me a lot of DeAndre Hopkins. He could just go up and get it. I think he's a very, very talented wideout, and I think he's a wide receiver one. As I mentioned just quickly from the defense, I think that's the biggest difference from this team, last year and the year before. I mentioned Dan Quinn coming over here, and the league high, like, they scored the league high in points. Like, offensively, they're going to score a lot of points. They're going to be there. But when we're looking at this team as are they Super Bowl contenders? We know that they're going to make the playoffs. They're favorites to win this conference, to win this division. And this conference is not that great. Like, there's the Rams and there's the Bucks and then there's the Packers and then I think there's the Cowboys. And the Cowboys, we could even maybe make a case that they're better than the Packers. They're going to make the playoffs. It's just, is the defense going to be good enough to win them a couple games? Because last year had to be certainly disappointing for Cowboys fans playing the 49ers. So I just want to just talk about the difference between the team, what Dan Quinn did. So the Cowboys allowed 158 rushing yards in 2020. It was the second most in the NFL, and they allowed the fifth most points in the NFL, 29. The run defense improved big time, where they only allowed 112 rushing yards per game and just 21 points. So they cut their points allowed per game to 7. The rushing yards almost 50, right? Dan Quinn did a good job, and it was all led by Micah Parsons. I can't talk about the Dallas Cowboys without talking about Micah Parsons, because he was an absolute home run pick for the Dallas Cowboys last year. You're playing in IDP leagues, put him on your list. Like, this is a guy who had 13 sacks last year, led all rookies, and it was the 6th most in the NFL. And then there's cornerback Trayvon Diggs. He gave up massive passing yards in the NFL. Like, he is kind of a boomer bust type corner. He likes to jump routes. Sometimes that works in his favor. Other times it just doesn't. Like, it really is that simple. He led the league in interceptions with 11, but Dallas also allowed 11.9 yards per reception, which was the 4th highest mark in the NFL last year. I mentioned Football Outsiders had them second in pass DVOA against the pass, and they had allowed the 3rd lowest quarterback completion at 59.5%. So it's like a little bit of a mixed bag there. Like, they're giving up a lot of big plays, but at the same time, they're second against the pass, and also the 3rd fewest quarterback completion rate against. So credit to Dan Quinn. Micah Parsons, again, home run pick. Trayvon Diggs, good corner, gives up big plays. Like, there's some things, like in DFS, it's like, there's always, like, I remember having these talks last year. We're going to wrap up the Cowboys here in a second. Remember having these talks last year in DFS. Do you want to take a wide receiver against Trayvon Diggs? Man, he's got 11 picks, and he's so good at, as a ball hawk and jumping routes, and he's very skilled. But that kind of burns him at the same time, right? He's not like when we get to Darius Slay, where Darius Slay is not jumping a ton of routes. If he's allowing catches, he's kind of locking them down right away. It's what I saw from Diggs was he either got the pick or it was a touchdown to the house. And we saw that numerous times last year. I think he's a great corner. I think the Cowboys defense is improving still, kind of middle of the pack. But keep that in mind when you're playing DFS. I think some people want to shy away from the top wide receiver against Diggs. And I think the contrarian route may be to go the other way, maybe take one of those wide receivers. So just to wrap up their draft, they did draft a tight end, Jake Ferguson out of Wisconsin. Don't feel like he's going to be a big part here of the offense. Tyler Smith, offensive tackle. So they did kind of replace a little bit of the pieces that they missed. It was a great pick in the mid-20s or so out of Tulsa. And then Jalen Tolbert in there as well. Okay, let's roll through this division. You saw the 10.5. I'm on the over here, but I'm going to roll through it with you guys. So week 1 against Tampa, and last year they started week 1 against Tampa as well in Tampa Bay, and they had a really good game. They lost that game, but man, they were leading it for a bit. They looked really strong in that game. I'm going to give them the loss, the week 1 against the Bucks, and then they play Cincinnati week 2 at home as well. I'll give them a win. Like, they're going to win one of those 2 games. I don't think they'll start 0-2, but that's a really tough start. But I guess good for them that they start at home, right? Sunday Night Football at home against the Bucks, and then they stay in their own building at home week 2, the place that Jerry built. So I got them 1-1 to start. Week 3 at the Giants. Years past they played the Giants pretty tight, some splits. Last year they took both. I think they take both again this year as well. So I'll give them one of those wins. I got them at 2 wins here. Washington, I'll give them that one At home against Washington, I got them at 3 wins. In Los Angeles to take the Rams, I got that one as a loss. In Philly to take on the Eagles, that one's a loss as well. There's some weird splits with Dak, home and road, and he doesn't, there's been some struggles at the link for him. So I'll give him the loss there. There's 3 wins. A win against Detroit, at home, a win against Chicago at home. Then they got the bye week, and then they got to go into Lambeau to face the Packers, which is a tough spot, a tough place to play for sure. But they got that bye week. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. That's a W. So what do I got them at? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 6 wins. Minnesota at Minnesota, 7 wins against the Giants again. At home, there's 8 wins. At home against the Colts, I give them that one. That's 9. Then they play Houston and Jacksonville, 2 layups. That's 10 and 11. So already we're over the win total. I have been kind of generous to them, I guess, winning one at Lambeau. And I still like it, 11. And then at Philly, home to Philly, there's another win, right? They're probably split that one against the Eagles. They may sweep them. I don't expect them to get swept. They'll get one of those. And then they wrap up Tennessee and Washington. So that's 12-13. I got them like as a 13-win team here, and I think that they regressed. I don't think that they're as good as last year. But again, the division is not good. It's a little bit better as we roll through some of the other teams here, but I think that they're, let's bring that up one more time. 10.5, I think they get to it. 10.5, I'm not in on them to win the division though. I'm really not, and that may seem weird as I roll through the Eagles schedule. I don't feel like I have them as a 13-win team. But the Dallas Cowboys, I do believe that they get to a very similar record that they had last year, and I don't think that they're a Super Bowl contender. I just won't be able to give them the benefit of the doubt against a team like the Rams or the Bucks. We'll see. Maybe Gallup is healthy. Maybe he can emerge as a strong wide receiver too. But I think ultimately they'll struggle a little bit with the offensive line.